August 1976. A Memphis radio studio hums with static and cigarette smoke. The DJ leans into the mic, then freezes. On the line is Elvis Presley. But it's what happens next, when he asks for one listener by name, that leaves an entire city silent. Stories like this remind us why Elvis wasn't just a performer, he was family to millions. If you want more powerful, untold moments like this, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss one. The red light on the switchboard blinked once, then again. Inside a Memphis radio studio on a humid August night in 1976, the DJ barely looked up. Call-ins came all the time. Song requests, dedications, the usual chatter. Cigarette smoke curled above the sound. The steady hiss of the air unit mixed with low static in the headphones. It was just another shift until he picked up. WREC, you're on the line. A pause. Then a deep, unmistakable voice cut through the static. Hey, this is Elvis. The DJ froze. The studio chair creaked beneath him as he sat bolt upright. At first, he thought it had to be a prank. Impersonators called sometimes, slurring through fake southern drawls. But this voice wasn't pretending. It carried that smooth baritone. The calm authority the whole world knew. Witnesses recall the room itself seemed to change, the dull yellow bulbs above the console looking suddenly brighter, the air itself heavier. One engineer would later say, it felt like lightning hit the station. The DJ stammered, fumbling to adjust the mic level. Elvis Presley. Yes, sir, came the steady reply. I'm calling in tonight. Listeners at home didn't know yet. To them, it was just another voice over the line. But in that small control room, hearts were pounding. Secretaries left their desks to crowd the doorway. An intern dropped his pen, staring wide-eyed at the receiver. This wasn't a publicity stunt. Elvis didn't need the airwaves to sell records. Graceland was only a few miles away. He could summon a crowd with a single appearance. So why was the king of rock and roll live on the phone, calling here tonight? The DJ tried to regain composure, flicking ash from his cigarette into a crowded tray. Well, Elvis, sir, this is an honor. What brings you to us this evening? Elvis's answer came softly, almost hesitant. I was wondering if Mrs. Thompson might be listening tonight. The control room went silent. The DJ frowned, repeating the name slowly, unsure he'd heard right. Mrs. Thompson. That's right, Elvis said. Mrs. Margaret Thompson. The engineers exchanged nervous looks. Nobody in the room knew who she was. Not a sponsor, not a local celebrity, not anyone tied to promotion. Just an ordinary name. And yet Elvis spoke it with familiarity, almost tenderness. An open loop formed instantly in the minds of everyone listening. Who was this woman? Why was Elvis at the peak of his fame asking for her by name, live on the radio? The DJ cleared his throat, papers shuffling nervously on the desk. Elvis. I'm not sure if she's tuned in this evening. Would you mind, Elvis said, if I spoke a little longer? Maybe she'll hear me. That single request broke the routine of the broadcast. The DJ waved frantically to the engineer. Keep recording. Don't cut. A reel-to-reel tape spun steadily in the corner, capturing history in motion. Listeners across Memphis leaned closer to their radios. Truckers pulled their rigs to the shoulder. Families at kitchen tables turned down the lights. According to some callers later, the whole city seemed to hold its breath. And Elvis, he didn't mention Graceland or concerts or his career. He didn't talk about himself at all. Instead, he repeated the question that hung in the air like smoke. "Mrs. Thompson, are you listening tonight?" The DJ's hand hovered above the console, his pulse hammering. Whoever Mrs. Thompson was, Elvis wanted her. This wasn't about publicity. It was personal. But who was she and why her? The line crackled. Elvis's voice had just asked for Mrs. Margaret Thompson. To the DJ, it was like a riddle dropped in the middle of a live broadcast. He didn't know her. Nobody in the studio did. But somewhere in Memphis, that name carried weight and Elvis knew it. Hours earlier, before the call, letters sat stacked in the corner of the studio. Among them were pages written in careful cursive on lined notebook paper. They came from a 72-year-old widow named Margaret Thompson. She had no family left in the house. Her children lived states away. Her husband had passed nearly a decade before. But every week she wrote to the station. She wrote about the weather, about the neighbor's dog that barked through the night, and, most of all, about Elvis. One letter had caught the DJ's attention weeks before. It told of a night back in the 1950s when she and her husband danced, barefoot in their kitchen to Love Me Tender, the smell of fried chicken still in the air, a cracked linoleum floor beneath them, a radio balanced on the windowsill. "He held me close," she wrote, and it felt like the whole world stopped. The DJ had read that letter on air one night, his voice breaking slightly as he reached the last line. Now, when Elvis sings it, "I feel like I have him back just for 3 minutes." Listeners called in after that broadcast, asking about the woman. Who was she? Did she really exist? The DJ confirmed she did. A quiet widow, living on the edge of town. Some say the letter was reprinted in a fan newsletter and eventually made its way to Graceland. Others insist a mutual friend mentioned her name to Elvis himself. The truth remains blurred, but what's certain is that Elvis learned of her story and never forgot it. Now, live on the line. He wanted her to hear him. The DJ's hand hovered nervously over the switchboard. Connect her line. Could this be real? He could feel sweat sliding down his temple. The studio was dead quiet, except for the low hum of the fluorescent lights. "Elvis," the DJ whispered, covering the receiver. "I don't know if we can find her this fast." Elvis's voice came back calm, unshaken. "Take your time. I'll wait." The weight of those words pressed on the room. The most famous man in America was telling a small-town DJ he could wait just to reach one widow. An engineer darted to the phone directory, flipping pages. Someone else started dialing numbers listed under Thompson. Busy signals. Wrong addresses. A string of dead ends. The clock ticked toward midnight. The reel-to-reel still recording every sound. Listeners at home didn't know the scramble happening behind the scenes. To them, it sounded steady Elvis, speaking softly, the DJ stretching for time, promising, "We're trying." "Sir," every second pulled the tension tighter. What if she wasn't home? What if she never picked up? And then one ring. Another, a click. A woman's faint voice, cautious and unsure. "Hello." The DJ nearly dropped the receiver. The studio erupted in silent gestures, hands over mouths, eyes wide. Elvis leaned in through the line, his tone turning gentle, almost protective. "Mrs. Thompson." The DJ pressed the button, patching her voice live onto the air. That trembling hello, carried out across Memphis, through car speakers and kitchen radios, into thousands of homes. And on the other end was the woman Elvis had been searching for. The trembling hello barely rose above static. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The DJ's finger hovered above the fader, unsure if this was truly happening. Then, the deep, unmistakable voice answered, "This is Elvis, ma'am." The control room froze. Engineers leaned closer to the speaker. A secretary covered her mouth. Even the janitor stopped sweeping, gripping his mop handle like a cane. On the line, Margaret Thompson's breath caught. The sound was sharp, like a gasp pulled from deep in her chest. She whispered, uncertain, "I beg your pardon." Elvis chuckled softly, not the stage laugh, but something smaller, warmer. "It's me, Margaret. Elvis Presley." The DJ's heart pounded so loud he swore the mic could pick it up. Across Memphis, listeners sat forward. Some later said they turned their dials, afraid it was a hoax, only to find the same voice on every station carrying the relay. Mrs. Thompson's silence stretched. Then came the sound of a chair scraping. She was standing, perhaps, or steadying herself on a table. Finally, her words, "Oh, my lord, it is you." Elvis's tone softened. "Yes, ma'am. I heard about your letters, and I wanted to thank you myself." The line crackled with quiet sobs. Margaret wasn't a woman used to attention. She lived in a modest one-story home on the edge of town, curtains always drawn, porch light flickering. To have Elvis Presley, the Elvis Presley speak, her name was more than she could hold. Elvis didn't rush her. He asked simple questions. How long were you married? What was his name? Her voice steadied as she answered, "Harold." 48 years. Elvis let the silence breathe, never filling it with his own story. The DJ wiped his brow, marveling. Here was the most famous singer in the world, not selling records, not plugging shows, just listening. Then Margaret began to share the memory. "The last time we danced," she said, "was in the kitchen. He was sick, but he held me anyway. The radio was playing your song, 'Love Me Tender.'" Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "When he passed, I thought I'd never hear it the same again. But when I wrote those letters, it felt like I had him back for 3 minutes at a time." The room around the DJ blurred. Engineers looked down, swallowing hard. One whispered, "Don't cry on the tape." Elvis's reply was not scripted, not rehearsed. "I'm real sorry for your loss, ma'am. But if it's all right, I'd like to sing it for you now." The DJ's jaw dropped. Was Elvis about to sing live over the phone? There was no band, no microphone, no polished mics. Just a handset pressed to his cheek and the hum of the studio recording it all. He began, softly, "Love me tender. Love me, sweet." The voice was raw, stripped of concert reverb, slightly frayed at the edges, but unmistakable. Mrs. Thompson's sobs broke into the line, blending with the faint hiss of static. Listeners in cars pulled to the side of the road. People in diners stopped chewing mid-bite, straining to hear. Memphis fell into a hush. By the second line, Margaret's faint voice whispered along, not loud enough to drown him, but just audible, a grieving widow trying to keep up with the king. The DJ couldn't breathe. He turned his chair, covering his face with one hand. A secretary silently passed tissues across the control board. The song ended, not with applause, but with silence. A silence so heavy it felt sacred. Then Margaret spoke, voice trembling. "Why me, Elvis?" The studio held its breath. Why her? Why this widow in Memphis? And on the other end of the line, Elvis drew in a quiet breath, ready to explain. Elvis's breath was quiet over the line. The studio seemed to shrink, the humming fluorescent lights fading into the background. Even the hum of the tape reels sounded like a heartbeat. Then he spoke, calm, gentle, almost confessional. "Margaret, I wanted to call because your words, they reminded me of my mama." The DJ froze. Margaret's fingers clutched the receiver like a lifeline. She had never expected this level of intimacy, this personal reach. The city outside carried on, unaware that a king of music was leaning into the line of a single fan. Connecting heart to heart, Elvis continued, voice low, almost a whisper through the static. "I prayed my songs would comfort her, and somehow, hearing your story reminded me why I sing. It's for moments like this." In the control room, the staff exchanged glances. Engineers' eyes glistened. The janitor's mop hovered mid-air. The DJ shook slightly, fumbling to adjust the faders, but none of the knobs mattered anymore. The room itself seemed to hold its breath, wrapped in the resonance of kindness. Margaret's voice trembled. I don't know what to say, Elvis." Let her speak, never interrupting. She recounted a detail she had never shared on air. Her husband's habit of humming "Love Me Tender" each morning. The smell of coffee mixing with the worn wood of their kitchen. The gentle tug of his hand at hers as they swayed to the song. Each word hung in the studio, a tiny spotlight illuminating a memory decades old. The hum of static became a lullaby. Then Elvis did something unexpected. "Would you sing it with me? Just one line, darlin'." Margaret hesitated. Her cheeks flushed. "Oh, I couldn't. Just one line. No one else has to hear it. But I want you to." His words were patient, coaxing, tender. The DJ swallowed hard, leaning forward, sensing the gravity. She hesitated for a moment longer, then whispered, "All right." One line they sang together, rough, hesitant, imperfect. Margaret's voice cracked, trembling with grief and awe. Elvis's voice steadied her, guiding, warming, lifting. The chorus of "Love Me Tender" drifted through the studio, over the phones, into the ears of countless strangers, off-key in parts, ragged in timing but pure, authentic, heartfelt. The engineers later said the air in the control room felt thick, almost sticky with emotion. One remembered seeing the DJ's hand tremble as he scribbled a note. "Never forget this." When the last note faded, silence returned. But it was a sacred silence, one that made the hiss of the tape recorder feel like applause. Margaret's soft sobs echoed over the line. Elvis spoke again, quiet, deliberate. "This isn't the last time you'll hear from me, Margaret." Her breath hitched. "You promise?" "I promise," he said, a small chuckle threading through. "Some things, they need to be kept between us, you and me." The DJ leaned back, exhaling as if the air itself had been holding him hostage. Outside, life carried on, unaware that something miraculous had just passed through a radio line. But inside that studio, a city's heartbeat had slowed, listening in reverent stillness. Margaret whispered a single line into the receiver. I don't think I'll ever forget this." Elvis paused, then added, softly, "Good. That's how it should be." And then, just as suddenly as it began, the call ended. The dial tone hummed like a quiet drum, leaving the studio with echoes of tenderness. A single duet suspended in time and a promise yet to be fulfilled. A week later, the autumn sunlight streamed through Mrs. Thompson's lace curtains, painting the kitchen in gold and amber. She moved slowly, still shaken from the call, a lingering warmth in her chest. Then the doorbell rang, a sharp chime that cut through the quiet. No one was expected. Her neighbors watched from across the street, curious. The mail carrier stood patiently, holding a plain package that seemed too heavy for its size. Margaret's hands trembled as she carried it to the table. The brown wrapping was simple, almost unassuming, but a sense of suspense pulsed through the room like a tangible current. She tore it open to reveal a small record player, polished wood reflecting the sunlight, its chrome handle glinting. Beneath it, nestled in crumpled tissue, was a note. The handwriting, unmistakable. You'll always have a front row seat. With Love, Elvis, her breath caught. Her knees weakened. For a moment the air seemed to stop, the world outside fading into soft focus. The record player seemed to hum in silent anticipation, as if it had waited for this exact moment, ready to spin memories into motion. Margaret lifted the record, noticing the embossed lettering on the vinyl. Love me, tender, special dedication. She placed it gently on the turntable. The first crackle of the needle sent a shiver down her spine. Then the music began, Elvis's voice, tender, familiar, almost a whisper in her ear. She closed her eyes, letting the melody envelop her. Each note brought back the warmth of her late husband's hand in hers, the scent of his morning coffee, the soft rustle of the kitchen linoleum under their dancing feet. She could almost hear him humming along, smiling from a memory lifted into the present by the king's voice. Tears ran freely now, a mixture of grief, joy, and disbelief. Neighbors later recounted the scene, how she sat by the window, record spinning, sunlight catching her silver hair, and how the soft strains of Elvis's voice carried down the street. Some paused, listening from their porches. Others pulled over in their cars, captivated by the intimacy of the moment. The call, once a private exchange, now rippled outward in quiet. Unspoken reverence. Inside the Thompson household, the gift became a ritual. Every evening, she played the record, holding it close like a talisman. Elvis's voice filled the rooms that had once echoed only with absence. The DJ at the station kept the reel from that night, a preserved testament to the power of connection, of music, of a king who didn't just perform love, but delivered it, personally, to one faithful listener. Years later, the story circulated in whispers and letters to the station. Staff recalled it as the only time dead air felt sacred. Engineers described the chill in the control room that night as holy, the kind of silence that makes you feel time itself has paused. Listeners shared tales of traffic halted, radios tuned, hearts still. For many, it became the story that proved a performer could transcend fame, turning fleeting moments into eternal memories. Margaret herself never sought publicity. Some say she tucked the record and note in a cedar chest, returning to them often, a private shrine to a personal miracle. Yet the story survived, retold in hushed reverence, a reminder that music can reach deeper than words, and that even the smallest act of recognition can transform a life. The twist, the handwritten note, the intimate gift sealed it. Elvis had not only listened, he had responded. Not for show, not for fame, but for connection. A single call, a small package, a song yet together. They became immortal. The radio station still preserves the reel from that night. It's considered one of the most emotional moments in Memphis radio history. Fans and historians recount that Elvis often privately responded to letters like Margaret's. but rarely with such immediacy or personal touch. Some acts of kindness echo forever, long after the music fades. If this story touched you, share it with someone who believes music can heal. What's the one song that carried you through a hard time? Let us know in the comments, and honor the moments that remind us why we listen.